But I've heard so many like bad stories about people's first experiences that I want to like. It's a really wainy day. It's really wainy today. It's willy wainy. It is really rainy today. Although it's kind of weird. I want to go outside anyways. Just be like, is it warm and rainy, or is it like cold and rainy? Because if it's warm and rainy, I kind of just want to go outside. And I know that's a weird thing, and you don't have to come with me. And I probably won't be out for long. But it's kind of cold. Feels like -4. That's pretty cold. Might be the lack of natural light. It might be the lack of natural light. You will not come with me. I didn't think you would. I was just making sure that you knew that I didn't mean you had to come with me. Lots of stories about bad experiences, and I think that there are like really easy ways for like us as like a community to like fix that. And of course, this isn't going to reach every table on the earth, but for the people who like can see this and have either, and also for people who have like been like had their first experience go really bad and they've kind of like written off D&D, I hope we can change that for those people too, by being like, we're not all dicks. Because the biggest thing that it comes back to, and this is kind of reflected in my list, and this also isn't like the only things, this is just kind of the stuff that I came up with and what we came up with last night and stuff, and a lot of this does just, like, it's not just coming out of my brain, it comes from, like, actual stories that I've heard, but the biggest one is these people issues, and the biggest people issue is people just, like, being rude people, or mean people, or, like, whatever. And so I kind of want to, like, go through each of these and talk about how we can, like, fix them, or, like, a better perspective on them. I kind of want to start at the bottom and work my way up, because the ones at the bottom are kind of silly, but also kind of like the easiest ones to like get over, and also they're less likely to be the reason that somebody is going to not come back to D&D, but they might be one of those feathers, or no, one of those straws on the camel's back kind of thing. Like if a bunch of other stuff has gone wrong and then this also happens, it might be like the last thing that tells somebody like D&D is not for me. D&D is for everybody. I mean, not everybody has to enjoy it, but I feel like most people would enjoy it as long as they find the right table. And again, maybe not D&D, but like another TTRPG with like a different theme might be better for them as well. But I feel like this kind of stuff is probably like TTRPG like wide. So starting at the bottom, this one is only on here because it was part of a story that we looked at on Monday. And it really was like the straw on the camel's back kind of thing. Like the session was already like, it was a session that shouldn't have happened because people were rude before the session happened, but then within the session a lot of people were rolling really badly, so things like weren't happening, and not only was it new players, but it was like a new DM as well, so they didn't know how to like fix it and like bring it back to life kind of thing. But the only real way to fix that is to just laugh it off, be like, wow, like RNG is so crap. And, like, if it happens that you're having so many bad rolls, especially with, like, a group of new people, it might be a good idea to just, like, change your DCs on the fly. Now, of course, if you're also a new DM, you don't really know, like, what the, how to do that properly, so that kind of, like, puts a damper on it. But if you're a veteran DM with like a bunch of new people, it might be good to just like drop the DC to like 8 on everything so that like the bad rolls aren't as bad. And then these ones are kind of like about the player, and them not knowing kind of like what to do, whether that's mechanically or just they're so used to having options laid out before them for them to like choose an option that the like extreme open world is like really hard for them to like take action. And then just the general uncomfortableness of roleplay if you've never done something like that, especially if you're with a group where you're not already like super comfortable being silly in front of them. Because that seems to be a really big fear of people, is like saying something dumb and the group laughing at them and stuff. And for me, that kind of comes back to people issues, which we'll talk about later. But like, if you're playing with friends who all are like nice to each other and stuff. You're not gonna have that problem. And like now, some friend groups obviously like tease like the group and stuff, but being in a situation where like you guys are friends, like it's just, if you're used to teasing from those people, it's not gonna hit the same too if they do tease you about it. So it's not like that kind of depends on your friend group. But how do we fix these things? So fixing the not knowing what to do thing is, again, easier to do if you are a veteran DM, or if you have a veteran player at the table who's going to like take on that role of kind of like helping out the new person. And if it is one new person in a veteran group, all the better, because that means that like everybody can take a little piece of this and it doesn't feel like somebody's holding that new person's hand. Because some people would feel kind of weird about that, and like I get that. I'd feel a little weird about it too. But if you feel like the new player or new players don't really know what to do, go back to that like video game thing of like laying out some options. But one of those options is also like, if any of these options have sparked an idea in you, do that one instead. And then the like general uncomfortability with roleplay is explaining that you don't have to. That's like the best part about this is, especially for like your first time, like you're trying to get used to this kind of thing. And so, you don't necessarily know, like if you're an actor or something, like if you were a drama kid, you're not going to have a huge problem with this. But if you weren't, especially if you're a shy person or something like that, you can remind the player that they don't have to talk in character. They don't have to come up with a funny voice. They can just say, my character wants to persuade the guard to let us through. They don't even have to come up with dialogue if they don't want to. That's enough. My character walks up to the bar and asks for a beer. They don't have to actually ask the bartender for a beer. So taking away that like first person thing often makes it a little bit more comfortable, but they're still engaged in the game. And obviously, if anybody has things to add to this, please feel free. I feel like I'm just like talking at you and I haven't really opened it up for you guys, but obviously this isn't like I mean, it is like a little bit like my TED talk, but if you guys have things, you can say stuff. You're sad because you can't find a group. This is another huge issue within it, and I do have some advice for it. My first one is, it's not, so as we grow this group, it will become easier, but get in there now. We do have a Discord where even if you can't necessarily find a game right away, you'll be able to talk about D&D. But actual things, if you don't want to do that, or it's not like the biggest Discord yet, but other ways to get into a game are looking for groups online. You can do that on Reddit at RLFG. RLFG. I'm actually going to be doing a video on this too. Or you can use things like Roll20 and their Find a Group program. If things are open around you, you can go to your local games show. I mixed shop and store together. You can go to your like local games store. And you can try out Adventurers League. From what I've heard, Adventurers League is kind of like, but it is a great place to meet people. Also within game shops, sometimes clubs will just hold games and stuff like that. You can also check out your local libraries for clubs holding games and stuff like that you can get in on. Eventually, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but eventually I will be opening up doing like one-shots and stuff for people, which will get you playing the game, but also, again, getting you meeting new people to like start a group up with you. So hopefully something like that will help. Some people don't like to play online, and I agree that it is not the best necessarily. I definitely prefer to play in person, but if you really just want to start playing online is perfectly fine. But I hope you find a group to play with. Yes. Also, welcome in Dark Force. I hope you're well today, other than being sad that you can't find a group to play with. Okay. So that kind of like covers the like in-game issues. So of course, absolutely. And if you have any other questions or anything, feel free to ask them. I'm actually going to be starting like a YouTube series about it's going to start with obviously like super beginner stuff, and then we're going to move into other stuff. And also I'll probably have edited versions of these like D&D chats that we do, but you can check that out too if you want. Right now, it is just the campaign that we run on the channel and shorts and stuff from that, but I will be putting up educational content, so that might scratch the itch of playing a little bit as well. So yeah, I guess we'll move on to like the game mechanics things, and a lot of this is just like the knowledge of the game. Would you allow your character, he's an ogre, like probably he has to follow, like the rules of the game and stuff, like proper character creation, but generally I let most things go, and rule of cool and whatnot. Yeah, then I mean most DMs will allow him. There's not really a reason unless they have unless they've like restricted it to certain books and stuff. But that's like a really important thing. Like a lot of new players, like they have like a character that they've already created on their own, but not every DM is going to let that happen either, just because they already have like preset like guidelines for their campaigns and stuff like that. And also a lot of DMs like to work with their players to create characters. So keep that in mind when you are looking for a group. That you might have to play a different character for like your first time, especially as a new player. Some people like to keep it to like player's handbook and stuff like that. It's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, a lot of this comes back to like knowledge, and then that feeds into the like people issues of people getting frustrated over new players not having knowledge, which just doesn't make any sense to me. So, not understanding consequences, because it's D&D and it's not a video game, consequences are kind of different, especially depending on the table you're sitting at. So understanding how death works at the table you're working at is important. And also, like, if you are, like, a new player, or a DM, like, with a new player, maybe not making it so, like, difficult if death is something that happens a lot at your table. But my first character died in their second session, which was kind of upsetting. Not because, like, I mean, like, I was attached to the character already, of course, because it was something that, like, I put effort into making, but also just I didn't really get the chance to play that character for very long. And then I was like, well, now I can't play this character, I have to play something, like, completely different. And then that character lasted for way too long. And, like, I enjoyed them, but it was... I don't know. I could have played a better character, which is also another thing that's on this list, which is just choosing a bad character. And this can be a bad character for you without you realizing it, like, as the new player, like, picking something, and then just it turns out that it's not the style of play that you want. But it could also be that you picked something that's just not really made for new players. I would generally suggest that you pick like a martial class as a new player, because spellcasting mechanics can be a little bit confusing for a new player. But if you are super set on playing a spellcaster, I suggest like writing out your own notes on how everything works. You like barbarian? That is perfect. That is probably the best new like first time character in my opinion. I would generally suggest like barbarian or fighter. Rogue isn't terrible as a first time character, especially if you're starting at level 1. Welcome in, Silver. Hi, how's it going? He's an ogre barbarian. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good first character, honestly. But you can definitely choose a character that either you're just not gonna enjoy the play of, or they're gonna be like a little bit too confusing. And usually that comes from spell casting, because things like spell slots aren't like necessarily as straightforward as I hit the thing with my hammer. Think the best starting character is something that interests you. Yeah, that's why like I put the caveat on there of if you're really set on playing a spellcaster, then do it. Absolutely do it. Just know that it is a little bit more complicated than playing a martial class. Because that comes back to the first reason something can be a bad character, and that is it's just not the playstyle for you. So if you're somebody who usually plays, your first character was a wizard and you loved it, and that's fantastic. This is obviously like super generalized and obviously always has that caveat of like play the thing that's going to be fun for you. And that's why the first part of choosing a bad character is this is not the playstyle for you. Yesterday, we had somebody answer the question of the week of like, how was your first experience? And why do you think it went well? Or why do you think it went poorly? And they were like, mine went poorly because I chose a paladin and I really hated it. And like, otherwise their experience was fine. They just didn't like, because their first experience was in 2E. And so alignment was like a huge component of that, especially for paladins. It's pretty much the only one that still has alignment attached to it, I find right now. And I have feelings about alignment. I also hate alignment. But because it was like such an important part, I guess, of 2E, I've never played 2E. But they didn't like how much their DM like held them to the lawful good, because it was like held to the point of like anything that wasn't a completely selfless act, like they got penalized for it. And they gave the example of if you have a coin left and there was somebody that needed it, and you didn't give it to them, you were stripped of your paladinness. And I was like, wow, that's super fucked. You just have to read that spellcasting feature like 10 times. Yeah, so that's like another piece of it, which I have somewhere else in this list, which is like the effort that you're willing to put in. You're a weirdo, you like alignment. Okay, so I don't actually hate alignment. I don't like being held strictly to alignment. Heck with that, yeah, right? You just want to go in and beat people down. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's like that like play style thing, right? So, but alignment, I don't think being strictly held to your alignment, especially by somebody who's outside of your character, is like fun. And so what I mean by this is a player or a character or a person who is, we'll say, neutral good, okay? Like, that doesn't mean that they're never going to do like neutral acts or true neutral acts. They're never going to do a lawful good act. That doesn't make sense. There's always going to be like some sort of wiggle room within that, and there's always going to be some sort of situation where they're not going to follow that like one specific alignment, and that's what I mean by I don't like alignment. I do think alignment is a really good thing to use as like a baseline, just like every like person IRL has like a baseline alignment, a baseline morality. But there are going to be times where you'll probably step out of that, or like maybe you kind of hover between two. And also there's the idea of the perception of your alignment versus your like internal alignment. And I think that's kind of a fun thing to talk about, is you may find yourself to be like a lawful or like a neutral good person or something, but there are actions you've taken who somebody else perceives them as evil because you slighted them by taking that good action, right? So I think that's kind of like a fun thought experiment as well. You would tell them, nope, I'm out. And that's also like, that's a really good way to fix some of these problems, right? Is to just, the problem player leaves, or the person who doesn't like the entire table leaves, because if you're the only one who's not enjoying what's happening at the table, then you just need to find a new group. That isn't the table for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like when players are doing things with alignment, you hate when GMs are doing— yes! Yeah. I don't like it when a GM or DM holds you to your alignment, because I don't think it's fair of somebody else to tell you what your motives are, if that makes sense. And also, like, going back to that coin example, keeping the coin is just, like, self-preservation, and yeah, sure, that's a selfish act, but you can't continue to do good in the world if you're dead. And if you don't have that one coin, maybe that means that you don't eat. Maybe that means that you don't have shelter and you die because of that. So, like, what good is that? For you, alignment isn't a personality description. It's a character's belief system. A paladin isn't lawful good as a personality trait, but believes in law and good, at least in older editions. And I think that is, like, a huge piece of it, too, is I think everybody kind of looks at the definition of alignment differently. And I think a lot of that comes from only seeing it in, like, later editions. Like, for me, I've only ever played 5e, and alignment just isn't that important in 5e. And then also there's a lot of, like, arguments out there about what each alignment means. So perhaps you can follow alignment things while sitting at, like, your table and deciding what it means for all of you specifically. In our session, in our session 0, we talked about alignment, and we basically said alignment's a great baseline, and that's all it is for us. And I think that's also fine. So I don't know that I can split these two things apart personally, if that makes sense. Because, like, I believe in law and good, but I am not a lawful good person. I'm a neutral good person. Because there are definitely laws that I think are bullshit. You love evil and chaotic paladins? Yeah, so that's of course like an oathbreaker or whatever. You don't. That's fair. A good person can do bad things. Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't necessarily change their baseline alignment, and that's the way that a lot of, like, GMs do it, right? Like, you do one bad thing and suddenly your alignment has changed. And I don't think that's fair. Tell them every time they ask you for checks, you say, nope, not doing it. Make it hard for me. I do the same to DM, especially if they're doing it to you. I mean, what? You tell them every time they ask for checks to not do it? I mean, that's kind of the point of the game, though. I'm confused by your comment. I think I'm just misunderstanding something. It doesn't even have to be an oathbreaker, bad oaths or chaotic ones. That's true. Oh my god, the reason that is in my head is because of the one guy. Oh my god, it always comes back to him. I've had that thought before, but there's something just stuck in my brain because of, like, one experience I've had with a DM who, like, stuck to alignment, like, a little bit too hard, like, always wanted to know our character's alignments and stuff, and I was like, I don't know what my character's alignment is, or, like, it's this, and he's like, oh, you wouldn't do that then. It's like, well, no, that's what my character's doing. Like, you can't tell me my character wouldn't do that just because of my alignment. That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, you can absolutely not be an oathbreaker and have a bad oath. I've had this thought before. It's just, I've ruined my thoughts. Honestly, I've ruined my thoughts on paladins because of having to watch one paladin go through a campaign with a GM who, like, held alignment to, like, strictly. Very strange that they wouldn't do that because they did. See, this is the other thing. This is the other thing that, okay, I haven't read your whole comment yet, Valen, but, I always explain the way that I look at laws and everybody tells me I'm wrong, so I've just changed my view on what lawful means. And I think you're about to validate my original thoughts on law. Law doesn't mean following your local laws, but believing in law and order as a concept. Oh god. Kind of like it being an important driving force of morality. Some laws, however, are not good. I'd probably say that if you don't think law and order itself is a good moral belief, then you probably don't believe in it. Okay, so I've always explained being lawful as following a certain set of rules. So you didn't quite validate me here, but you also didn't, like, invalidate me, if that makes any sense. I definitely, I really like this, and I'm gonna have to think on it a little bit more. Because taking it as believing in a concept of law and order makes a lot more sense to me, but also pushes me further away from law, like being lawful, I think. And I think the reason that it pushes me away from that is because that kind of, and this is obviously just like the way that I'm thinking about it, so this is like not the same for everyone, but when I think Law and Order, I think lack of change. And I think stuff like that, like I think stuff that's like overarching morality needs to be able to change. And I think we see that like just like within our own world where like the morally good thing changes because we realize that we're dicks. The easiest one, like the easiest example for me is how like our views on like race have changed, you know, like we realized that like melanin doesn't mean bad because that's stupid, but that used to be a thing, right? And I'm not saying that Law and Order can't change. That's just like kind of like what I think of when I think of Law and Order, is that like it lacks change because like it's orderly. And I know that that probably more has to do with the way that things change and that they have to go through like a certain way of doing things. But I think that things can and should change with chaos sometimes. I kind of want to change the word in alignment now to, instead of lawful, being orderly, because I feel like order is more an opposite of chaos than law is. Can we just change that? Can we change lawful to orderly? I actually love playing paladins because they make you ask a lot of moral, ethical questions. I think any character can ask a lot of moral and ethical questions. If they ask you for checks, you won't do it. And if the DM is resting to alignment, and if the DM is making you have a bad time, then you give them a hard time. I don't think that's the right call. I think the right call is to just leave. I don't think you have to be like rude back, but that's just my personal I mean, yeah, no, you can do whatever you want. That would be one of those things where like I wouldn't want to play with you again though, like as a player or a DM. Because like that's kind of like it's reactive instead of like creating clear communication, because it like that's coming down to like the way that DM plays the game, and they might be open to playing the game a different way if you just like talk to them about it. I don't think poorly of you though. I personally don't think that's the right way to go about that. Paladins are fun philosophically, yeah. Your character likes plants and friendship. That's fair. You can do anything you want in your games. Yeah! Order, yeah, exactly. Order good, order neutral, order evil. I think that makes so much more sense. I think we've had a breakthrough. I think I might be coming around to alignment just because I understand it better thinking about it like order versus chaos instead of lawful versus chaos. If you're not having fun playing a game, you stop playing the game. Yeah, that's how I feel too. I don't think you need to like treat people poorly. You're a bit of a hothead sometimes. Yeah, that's fair. I live with a hothead, but also I don't allow him to treat me poorly if he's mad. He should cool off and then talk about it. And when I get angry, I also yell and stuff, and then I'm like, wait, we should probably take a step back and cool down and then talk about it, because it's quite possible that things can change if you're not rude. And that is kind of like this entire thing. Most of these just come back to respecting other people. You also live with someone who leads with emotional reactions. Yeah, no, I'm extremely reactionary. And I've always been that way, and it's something that like I wish was better and I should work on. And I'm not saying like if you got mad at the table that doesn't warrant a conversation later, but I think there's a difference between like being petty and being upset. And a lot of these things, like, I don't just mean at the table, right? And this, like, if you were here last night, you're going to hear the same stories again. I'm sorry. But I organized things better so we can have a better conversation about it. But a lot of the reason that I wanted to have this conversation is because I've seen a lot of stories, I've heard a lot of stories about bad first experiences, and also there was this tweet that I saw even after I asked this question, actually, which was paraphrased, in the short time that I've played D&D, the one thing I've learned is don't DM for your friends. And this, like, it did not make sense in my brain. And so I responded, I almost exclusively DM for my friends. It sounds like you have bad friends. Because if the people you're playing with are rude to you, which was the issue, was that the players were rude in some way, shape, or form, then they're also rude outside of the game. You only DM for your friends. Yeah. At this point, I've only DM'd for people I know. I'm going to change that eventually, because I do want to, like, run, like, one-shots and stuff for, like, people in the community, which I guess technically I know people in the community. Yeah, okay, so I'd still be playing with people I know, but I didn't understand that. And so their response back to me was, like, listing off the, like, issues they had, and my response was listing each of those issues, being like, yeah, it sounds like they're rude, yeah, it sounds like they're rude, yeah, it sounds like they're rude, and then, like, repeating, I think you have bad friends. Because it just doesn't make sense to me that most of the issues from the stories that I've heard from, like, friends and from just, like, scrolling through our D&D and stuff is that they just have players and DMs who are mean or rude or whatever, and that's, like, the biggest issue that they have, and that just blows my fucking gourd. I think there can be a big disconnect with people who have never DM'd not understanding the effort that goes into it. Absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing is like, this is, like, rude DMs as well as rude players. Now, a lot of the stories I have are from rude players, but you can also have a DM who just, like, goes on a power trip, and that's generally not fun either. But I do think one of the biggest issues, not necessarily for first-time players or new players, but just in general, is that players don't understand how much work goes into DMing, which I'm fucking blessed, because all three of my players have DM'd before. Which is great, because I also have them coming to me outside of sessions and be like, hey, I had a really cool idea for my character. Here's, like, an essay on Discord that I want you to read through, and then we can talk about it and, like, work on, like, that character arc and stuff, because they know that as a DM themselves, they would enjoy if their players were thinking about the game outside of the game, because it just means that everybody's putting in that extra effort. But that's definitely, like, a big piece of it. But honestly, the biggest complaint that I've seen from people I know and from people on the internets, on the interwebs, is just they go into their first session, and because they don't really know what they're doing yet, they get overlooked constantly, whether that's by their DM because they're not speaking up, or they're getting talked over by the other players. But they end up not getting to play. It ends up being a negative experience, and I've seen more than one person say, I don't really want to play D&D again. When your friends and your brother want to try D&D, you DM'd for them and encourage them all to DM at least once. Yeah, I agree. That actually, our first group was really good at that. Almost everybody DM'd at least once, like, did a one-shot for us. And that was a really, like, good experience. And, like, I had already wanted to DM, so the fact that I got to DM for a group that I was comfortable with was really good. And I did continue DMing after that. And I've also continued being a player. I'm not a forever DM. It's fantastic. But now they all understand you. Yeah, exactly. Welcome in the Undertaker. When you invite people or get invited to D&D game, you do engage in a maybe more deeper level of connection than some friendships go. I think your example guy bumped into the things about those friendships that weren't too solid to begin with. That's really what I'm coming back to, is that if you guys are friends and then you decide to DM for them and they treat you like shit, like they were already treating you like shit, you just didn't know about it yet because you weren't in like a situation where it was extremely obvious. I think that, and that's not like, there are lots of stories like that. We looked at one on Monday when we were scrolling through our D&D about this was like another issue too, is like if it's a group of all new people, there needs to be a lot more forgiveness of the other people for it not being like, it's probably just not going to be a good first time because nobody knows what they're doing. But that's besides the point. So this group of new people got together. They'd played one time before, and this one person was like, yeah, like I'll DM. And so they took it upon themselves to like start setting up a one-shot. They found a module they wanted to run. And there were definitely some like mistakes made in like choices of like, they probably should have been playing level 1 characters and not level 4 characters, and because the DM was new, they didn't necessarily like outline all of the options as well to the new players who also don't know how things work. But overall, it was the players being shitty people that made this not good, and the reason I say that is because the session never should have happened, and if I was the DM, never would have, because Buddy DM reached out like a day before or something. It was like, hey guys, like I need your character sheets so I can like look at like all of the stats and stuff to like figure stuff out basically. And 2 out of the 4 people didn't have a character sheet ready. So then the DM took 2 hours with each of them to help them set up their character sheet. Why it took that long? Because they're new. And so that was like red flag number 1. Red flag number 2, day of the campaign or day of the one shot shows up. 2 people are like, I can't go. I made other plans. Like, I'm sorry, what? If we were going out to coffee and you would just make other plans, why is it different for playing a game of D&D? Anyways, then they got together the next day, but that's already 2 red flags that I would not have continued with that session. That would not have happened if I was DMing, because there was absolutely zero respect for the time that I put into running this game for them. And of course, this comes back to that idea of like people not understanding like how much time goes into setting up a game as a DM. And I get that to a degree, but you're still actually just being an asshole by like making other plans when you already had plans with your friends. Like, obviously you guys weren't really friends if you're just willing to like double book yourself and then say, no, I'm not going. No, that story like blew my mind. I couldn't believe it reading through it. Like, I think I'm gonna take that VOD and like edit it out, because there are so many times where I just like stop and go, like, why? Why did you keep doing this? Why are people so rude? But yeah, okay, so I think we went through everything in the game mechanics. We've kind of like touched on people issues already, so let's just like jump full force into this. Some of these are like specific to first times, and some of them are like more generalized, but obviously an issue with first times as well. But like I said, this is the biggest one, the talking over and ignoring people. Charismatic Canine, hello, how's it going? I think the other biggest one, and we actually, this comes from a story from a viewer about their first time, and their first time wasn't great because nobody was taking the time to teach them how to play. And that's kind of like an important piece of your first time. You're doing okay, thanks. How am I today? I'm pretty good. I'm a little riled up apparently, but that's good. I like being riled up. I feel like I'm like yelling while I'm ranting and stuff, but ranting's good. But yeah, so anybody who's just coming in, I know it says it like in the title and stuff, but we're talking about bad new experience, or bad first experiences in D&D, because I've heard way too many stories about people having a bad first experience, and I think we should talk about like how to not do that. And my main point is play with people who are nice people. Do this thing where you like rotate between thinking of each character as your favorite through a session, so they each get some spotlight. That's interesting. I haven't actually tried thinking about characters is my favorite throughout a session, but it's because, especially with this campaign, they kind of just switch spotlights on their own, I find. They're like very good. Honestly, they run the show. I have a story kind of set up that they have to go through, but they mostly just tell the story themselves, which is good. It's good. I find it really fun. But basically the way that I look at that is I kind of just try to pay attention to who's not talking a whole lot, and then I check in with them. Because otherwise, because there are also people who just, don't, want to say a lot of stuff. And those people are called the Watchers. They're Watcher players. And those players are just as valid as everybody else, which is also, I think, an important thing to check in with your players and how much spotlight they do want. And just kind of play around that. But I do really like that idea, so I might try to implement that, especially for one-shots, especially with people that I don't know as well. Falcon, welcome in. I get frustrated when they aren't new, having played for months or even years and still don't know what the spells they're casting do. I don't disagree. I don't think you need to have an encyclopedic knowledge of these things. However, if you're a person who can't remember stuff like that, you should definitely have yourself some flashcards or something like that. And it's extremely important for those players to be planning their combat turns before it gets to their turn, so that they already know what spell they plan on casting and how that spell works. But I totally get what you're saying. I definitely agree that people not knowing how their characters work is frustrating, especially if they're not new. Obviously, if people are new, it's hard to know what your character does. And it's unfair of the other people to get frustrated by that if they're new. You had a pretty good first experience as a player. First time as a DM was not pleasant for you. Ooh, tell me about the not pleasant. I'm glad your first experience as a player was good, though. A watcher playing a high-end quiet character is so good. That makes sense, because when they do speak, it kind of it's you can hear a pin drop kind of thing. It's like, oh, the wizard is talking. I like that. That's fun. You recognize that you play 2 times a week in a game cafe and they do player's handbook only. Yes, I think that is I think that's really important for new players too, is to not get too crazy with your stuff. And I think player's handbook is a really good thing. And also, like you said, it makes it accessible for new players because that's only one book. The thing is, nobody actually takes the time to teach those people the basics. I think a lot of people that are playing 5e are drawn to the role-playing aspect of it, but can't grasp or bother to learn the basics. Yeah! So many new people, welcome in, guys. And Red speaks. But can't grasp or bother to learn the basics. Okay, so here's my thing about this. So, I feel like it's a little bit different playing in a game cafe. I feel like you have to come in with some knowledge yourself. And that was one of my tips. If we scroll up a little bit to last night's garbage of not an organization at all, but luckily this is right at the bottom, is tips for the new player too, because obviously it's unfair to expect everybody else at the table to be putting effort into making your experience good if you're not also putting effort into making your experience good. So I did write up some tips for that too, which is, read the PHB if you have access to it, including stuff outside the character you created, meaning the rules in the back and stuff. You can also just watch some YouTube videos, watch some actual plays, kind of get a feel for how the game goes. Watching actual plays can be a little bit dangerous, especially if you're watching something like Critical Role, because as Twitter will throw out 3 months down the line, because it comes up every couple of months, the Matt Mercer effect thing, you can't expect the game to look exactly like the actual plays that you're watching or listening to, because the people at your table are different and they have different skills and different wants too. They're gonna want to play a slightly different way than the actual plays that you're watching or listening to. But I still think it's a good idea to watch some of that or listen to some of that to kind of get the idea of the flow of a game, and how like deciding what you're gonna do works, like the exchange between a player and a DM. And then my other tip was to like create a character that has a reason to do things. So like a character with a goal, a character with a quirk, especially one that's like an active quirk. So that like that's a reason to like engage in the game. Your first time playing was with a new DM and all new players. Yeah. So we were all stumbling around all at once. But did you have like if you were to give it like the positive check mark or the negative minus sign, would you say even though you were stumbling around, you guys still had a good time, you still had fun, or do you think that it was a bad idea to play with all new players? It's so much fun. So I do have on here too many new people, but I think it's only too many new people who have a bad mindset. And I think having a good mindset is the most important part when you're new, especially if there is all new. I do think it's a little bit easier if there is like at least one veteran person around, whether that's a DM or a player. I don't think it matters. I do think it helps. Okay. Okay, offered to DM a game at a club after you found out the DMing was more fulfilling for you. But the first game you had, you ended up with 4 random players, 3 of which talked over me, got very argumentative with how their abilities and spells worked, and picked on the 4th player, who almost never said a word, and even when you asked them directly, the other three players basically made their choices for them. I didn't DM for them again. Yeah, that sounds like a really bad time, and also you made the absolute right call in my opinion. You were like, yeah, this table wasn't for me, so I'm not going to DM for them again because I want to have fun. And I wouldn't be surprised if those 3 players who are rude, this is what it all comes back to. They were not nice people. I hope a lot of people like leave them in the dust and they don't get to keep playing. Because we don't need those people in the like TTRPG as a whole community. Because games are fun. You're supposed to play games for fun, and being mean doesn't make it fun for the other people, especially when you have like an obviously shy person who, or maybe not even shy, maybe just like doesn't like confrontation, so like wouldn't speak up. I've literally been that person who doesn't want to speak up and gets talked over like a lot. Like there was a point where like I went to my DM and I was like, look, like I'm not having a whole lot of fun because I keep getting talked over. And like I talked to the whole group about it and they're like, oh yeah, we'll get better at it. And like they didn't get better at it just because like it was mostly because they were like excitable and just wanted to like talk and play the game and stuff and like couldn't hold that back. So there were points where the DM would just be like, look, let chick play her character, don't make her decisions for her and stuff. Yeah. But like it eventually did get fixed because we had the option to talk and we were friends. So like we did like make that communication. It did like get better over time. But with just random people like DMing at like a cafe or a club or like something like that, like I would not worth it for randoms, in my opinion. And maybe that's mean. Maybe that's the like little bit of like not so good in me, you know? Went hard into learning the rules, so you were guiding us the best I could. Yeah, okay, so I think when it's a bunch of new people, that's a really important part, is that everybody should take on learning like a piece of the rules or something like that. And so each player should learn how their character works, and then like just kind of try to learn like a little bit about how the game works in general. You're okay at handling excited players. It's often something you can help channel into some good experiences. I agree. But when people are just overbearing, both on you and others, the fun just disappears. Okay, so as a DM, there is a 0 tolerance policy for overbearing on me. And I'll get fucking weird about it. I tell this story all the time. I ran a one-shot for my sister and her friends. My sister's like 10 years younger than me. She just turned 19 yesterday. She can legally drink now. But I ran a one shot for her birthday when she was like, I think she had just turned 14. So it was a bunch of 14-year-olds, and there was one who was just like an excitable guy who like had main character syndrome for sure, and everybody was like having fun, but he was like, at some points he would get super overbearing, and one time he got way too overbearing, and my dad had told me beforehand to get an air horn for when they got too loud, and I didn't do it, but I still took his advice and just made an air horn sound with my face, and it worked really well. And honestly, I think if I was playing with a bunch of adults who were doing the same thing, I might do it, just because I think if you're acting like that, then you deserve to be treated like a child too, which means blowing an air horn or flicking the lights on and off might be the right call. And you're right. There's nothing wrong with people being excited. Excitement is so good, but at the same time, you need to learn to like rein it in a little bit. Thank you for the raid, Altered Paradise. Welcome in. It's been a while. How have you been? And welcome in, Raiders. How was your stream? Oh, my mod is now upstairs, so I guess I'll give you a shout out. Welcome in, Elite. Hi, hello. I am Chickadee, your friendly neighborhood cottage witch, and I guess now, like, your friendly neighborhood DM, I guess. Should I start saying that instead? Maybe. But we talk about D&D every stream for the first however much. Sure. I'll have another coffee. And then we play a game usually. Saturdays are kind of different. Sometimes I'll play a game, sometimes I don't. It depends how long our D&D conversation goes. But on Monday and Friday right now, we're playing through Cozy Grove because I like playing like simple little games where it's like really easy to like keep chatting with people. Because that is my main thing, is I want to chat with people. But yeah, welcome in, guys. If you have any questions about me or the channel or whatever, feel free to ask them. I gotta scroll up, see if I missed anything here. Pretty good. Both questions. Good. I'm glad. And we'll just hop right back into our conversation here. I'm going to... This is the question we're asking, our question of the week. It's a D&D question of the week. So if you guys have played D&D before, I want to know how your first experience went. If it was good, if it was bad, and why you think it went well or didn't go well. Okay, so Charismatic K-Nut, sis, this is where we're at. Although on the bright side, the very next group you DM'd for at the club led to an awesome 8-month campaign. That's so awesome. Haven't seen any of them in a long while. You moved away from that city. Going to the club became an expense you couldn't maintain. But we all ended up being good friends. That's really awesome. I'm so glad that the next story is such a positive one. And have you considered just playing online? I know it's not the same as playing in person, and I definitely prefer to play in person, but I'm actually running, like an online campaign right now on the channel, and it's going really well, and I think it's because of, like, the people we have. I think some people, like, playing online is a little bit harder, especially for people who get, like, really easily distracted and stuff. That's usually my problem, but I'm super engaged in this one. Maybe because I'm DM, it's easier to stay engaged, but, okay, I think learning how to share the spotlight is one of the most important and best skill sets to learn for an enjoyable table. I absolutely agree. And if you want to see this happen, watch my campaign, because I just sit back and let them talk until they're like, hey, we want to do this. Is there something I should roll for it? It's good. It's good. D&D. Well, oh, I see. You answer me later. I'll get to that. If you spend 8 minutes trying to persuade an NPC, don't do it again when the next NPC shows up. Take a back seat unless the party is totally fine with you doing it. Yeah, exactly. And this is like a really important thing. Especially if you have the self-awareness to know that you often take the spotlight. It's really good for you to like pull somebody into the spotlight with you and then leave them there. And there's literally a point where this happens. I don't know if it was on purpose, but the scene where everybody's talking to the herbalist in the last session, everybody's like in there. There's going to be campaign spoilers if you're trying to catch up on the campaign, so be aware of that. But they're all in the herbalist thing. The bad thing happens, and then Cribbin's character is like, oh, like, you guys go outside, and then he's like, wait, you're comfortable with Drugar. Drugar, you stay, and then Harry and Latruda go outside. And I don't know if he did that on purpose because he thought he had taken over, like, a little bit too much, or if it was just, like, an actual, like, character decision or something like that. But that's, like, a really easy way to do it, especially if you have that self-awareness. But you're absolutely right. And then to the point of, like, specifically persuading an NPC, it might make sense for your group. And, like, if you guys have talked about this, that somebody with high charisma just generally does the talking, and, like, that's a pretty common thing. But always checking in with communication to make sure that that's still okay is fantastic. So Elite says, couldn't remember, but somebody from your school introduced you to this, and now you forgot how your experience was since it was at least 3 years ago. That's fair. I honestly, like, I know I asked the question, but I don't actually remember my first session particularly well. I don't think it was a supremely negative experience, and obviously I kept coming back. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the flock of misfits. What kind of bird are you? But I don't think it was, like, profoundly positive either. That being said, my first session technically, if we're gonna include this, was a session 0, and I think the session 0 went pretty well. And then I just don't remember our first session. I remember like the narrative of it, but I don't remember, like, I think it was fine. I think it was like kind of neutral, so I'll give it like a positive. I think it's like 1 thumbs up, but it's not like 3 thumbs up. What was the what was the channel that I watched as a kid that would give 3 thumbs up and they were all on one hand? I think it was YTV that did it. Players talking to each other is the biggest gift they can give me as a DM. I totally agree. I love it. I love it so much. And there's like a couple different reasons why it's so good. Is A, like, it gives you time to just like sit back and like not have to be like doing anything. Also, while they're talking, you get to like take like the pieces and know the pieces that they're like most zoned in on, and therefore you can like take the time to expand on those. But also sometimes they're like, oh, what if this happens? Oh, what if this happens? And it's something you hadn't thought about yet, but now you best believe that's what's gonna happen. So players, know that your DM is always listening. Got into online gaming right after the start of the pandemic. That's kind of what pushed us towards it as well. So the game that we still had going, we played for a little bit. We didn't like it as much. We were using Roll20. We didn't like love it. I'm not even using Roll20 right now. I haven't even had to pull out a battle map though, so it kind of makes sense that we're not using Roll20. Everybody's rolling IRL dice because people like to roll their pretty math rocks. I'm not going to stop them because I like it too. And then like we just have a Discord call going with everybody's video because all we're doing right now is talking, really. Eventually we'll get to it, and I have like a plan for that without using Roll20, but I just found there was too much going on in Roll20 and I missed rolling my dice, and it was still like kind of hard to schedule around people and stuff like that, which is like that's just a big problem in general with games, is that like time respect versus disrespect. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the flock of misfits. What kind of bird are you? I'm sorry, guys. I'm slowly scrolling down. I swear I'm getting to everybody down there. Your experience, the low charisma person does all the talking because they don't know better. That's also like a really common thing too, and I think that leads to like more humorous things happening because they try to persuade somebody and they like just like whiff it. You started in 2003, so oh my god, almost why is it almost 20 years ago? Don't say words like this. I realized the other day I really hate it when I can say something happened over a decade ago. And like, over a decade ago, I was legally an adult, which is like, I know that doesn't make me that old, but like, it feels old when you're this old saying that, you know what I mean? Eventually be like, oh, that was like multiple decades ago, and that it's even worse. You're a doggo dressed as a bird, or am I? I like it. I like that a lot. There was somebody else, like a long time ago. Somebody was like, I'm a fish bird, because their name had something to do with fish. Can't wait for our school to open just for you to play again. Yeah, that makes sense. You're an old man. Fair. Nothing wrong with that. That's like a really cool thing about D&D in the community, I think, too, is like, you can have, the 5-year-old DM on Twitter, all the way up to, I don't know, some really old person. What's really old? It's such a weird thing to, like, decide what old is. Because to, like, a 5-year-old, like, an 8-year-old's really old. But to, like, a 99-year-old, like, is anybody old? Okay, what haven't we kind of got stuck on this one, because this one's like a really big one, I think. We talked about the lack of effort, kind of. And that this comes, like, if we're talking about, like, a first time, this comes from the lack of effort of the new player learning things, and trying to stay engaged in the game, and then for the veteran player or DM, not taking the time to teach and being frustrated when the new person doesn't know stuff because they're new. And then we talked a little bit about too many new people as well, which isn't necessarily a problem, and Silver even said, I think it was Silver, I hope it was Silver, that their first time was with a bunch of new people, and they did have a lot of fun. But we also saw that our D&D post, where there was all new people, and they did not have a good time. And what was the difference? Silver played with nice people who are nice to each other, and the person on our D&D played with people who did not respect them or their time or their effort, which made it a bad time. And so, like I said, it all really just comes back to, like, picking the right table, and picking the right table can mean, like, so many different things too. That can be picking people who are just good people who, like, respect each other and are nice and stuff. But it can also be, like, a table that wants to play the same kind of game as you, and there's nothing wrong with bowing out of a game or having one person leave because they don't belong in that type of game, and there shouldn't be hard feelings there, because everybody should be having fun. The person who's trying to change the way the game is, that's not fair to everybody who's already enjoying the game. And so they should find a table where they will be happy. And the like, opposite of that, what's the opposite of that? I don't know. I lost myself there. These people are still your friends, and you're currently running a game for 2 of them. Nice. Personally, as a DM, my favorite thing to do with brand new players is run a short 1-hour session one-on-one, which is basically an in-game training session. So the players can get a feel for spells, attacks, skill checks, and a bit of role play with their sparring partner and or trainer. That's a really good way to do it. I do like that. I personally, I'm not a huge fan of one-on-ones. I tried to do that with my partner, actually. Red tried to, like, run campaign for me, and it wasn't the same. I do like the idea of the training session, though, and that's why when I run for new people, I like to run for all new people, so that they not only get a feel for the game and we can move at the pace of somebody who's learning, but they also get to learn to interact with other players who aren't the DM. But also, I haven't really had a huge issue with, like, one new player. Well, I wasn't DMing that one. We did have a problem with one new player who was a little murder hobo-y even toward players, which was that there were a lot of things that happened in that session. 101 D&D is a very different experience and requires different planning. I agree. Also, welcome in, Gandhian. Good morning. Do you play the Rocky theme too? That would be pretty good. Yeah, no, I do think one-on-one D&D is different. I think it is good for learning like the basic rules and stuff, like learning that almost every roll is going to be a D20, because that's my favorite thing with new people, and I did this too, was like every time you go to roll, you go, that's a D20, right? That's a D20, right? And like almost every time it's like, yeah, it's a fucking D20, just roll a D20. But it's kind of like a hard thing to like wrap your mind around, especially if you've not played like any other TTRPGs, because my understanding, I haven't actually played any other ones, but my understanding is that most games are centered around like one die, and so that's the one that you almost always use or only use. And D&D is a D20 based system. Have a great D&D horror story? Ooh, tell me all about it. Horror stories are fantastic. Finding players for your type of game seems to be your problem so far. A one-shot of last ended with a heavy RP part, but when the last BBEG combat came around, the GM was forced to dial it way back because the Bard and Rogue went way ahead and died while you were basically unhit, which is a big turnoff as you enjoy combat a lot. Interesting. I don't that's so annoying that like two people in the party kind of like ruined the big bad at the end. I'm sure like it probably wasn't like super intentional. So your favorite, if you were to take like a favorite pillar, your favorite pillar is combat then. For anybody who like doesn't know what the pillars are, it's like combat, exploration, and social. And so in order for me, I'm kind of the opposite of you. It goes RP, exploration, combat, or social, exploration, combat. I really like the RP aspects, the like narrative aspects, like the like finding the clues and like that kind of stuff, which and like opening up the world and learning about the world, which is the exploration part. And combat is just in there to like move the plot forward for me. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with combat being your first thing. I'm not saying that. That's just like the opposite of me, so it's interesting that that's the case. They only played like their second game ever. That's fair. That is definitely, I think, a thing that happens a lot with new players, is they kind of like rush through the game a little bit. And I think part of that, like I could be wrong about this, but I think part of that comes from like the way video games work, which is also why I like D&D, because it's not a video game. So like they're like, okay, this part's done now, let's go to the next part, without like taking time to like smell the roses, if you will. To be honest, one-on-one games are kind of a preference for you. Interesting. Like you've run duet games of Vampire the Masquerade. I often find it's a lot more involved, a little more video gamey because it's the one player in a world of NPCs. But I can pull together a much more involved story when you only have one character to write for. Interesting. Yeah, I think I definitely prefer smaller groups. So I've run for as small as 2 people, up to 7, I think. I think there were 7 or 8, which just happened to also be all the 14-year-olds and my partner, who's also kind of like a 14-year-old sometimes, especially when surrounded by 14-year-olds. He was good during that one for sure. He was definitely, we made him a character who was a small sickly wizard, so he couldn't really do much anyway. But he was kind of just there. I mean, he was going to be there anyways, and then also kind of just like as a backup character to kind of like help me guide the kids through their first campaign and stuff. Although one of them had played before, and she was a delight. I definitely prefer like on the smaller end of that. Definitely like 2 to 4 players, I think, is kind of like my sweet spot. Though I haven't ran for just one person. Though I don't think I would like that because I don't get that chance to sit back and watch the RP happen like I do when there's like another person around. So I think that's why I prefer to have multiple players. D&D any % speedrun. Yeah, exactly. The one time I played with strangers didn't go well. I don't really remember the specifics, but we had a disagreement and the warlock cast sleep on my character. I left because I didn't like that. My friend who stuck around for a bit after that told me they killed your character and took your stuff. Oof. Oof, indeed, charismatic canine. Oof, indeed. Um, do they realize they could have just taken your stuff without killing you? Like, not that that's great either, but like I kind of like get like looting all the bodies, I guess. All the bodies is awful about a PC. Um yeah, so that's definitely one of those things where like we set expectations about that, expectations and boundaries. Expectations and boundaries are very important about PvP. And so we set expectations and boundaries about PvP in the session 0. And then if you watched, we had some PvP happen, and originally like we talked about doing fisticuffs, but in the moment Red was like, my fisticuffs don't do anything, I want to use my spells. And the person that he was currently like PvPing was like, yeah, use them, it's fine, I'll just maul you to shit. And so they fought, and it was fine, and nobody died. That was one of the other rules, is that you had to pull your punches, you weren't allowed to kill another PC, which I think is important, so that you had to deal with that. Yeah, I mean, also though, you made the right call just like leaving at that point. It really sucks that like you like blocked out that part of your day and you took your time to make the character and stuff like that, but it would have been more of the whole like fallacy of like the time sink fallacy. I forget what it's actually called. No, I think it's called time sunk. Where people generally like continue to do the bad thing just because they already put in a bunch of time. But you didn't fall to that. You were just like, fuck this shit. That's not fun. I'm not going to be sleeping for like forever. It was really funny. I'm glad this happened within the first time. Yeah, the fact that it happened so early is fantastic, because then you could just get to fuck off. The moment they cast Shatter and you're like, you're gonna hit me as well, and they're like, yep. Yeah, okay, so that's like obviously like another thing to talk about is, I mean, that's still like PvP, but that actually brings up, whoa, where was that? Oh, that was the first one that we looked at on Monday, which was, it was from the DM's perspective, and the backstory to like the camp, or the like quest that they were on. So they had set up a quest for their players where they had to go into, or they eventually ended up going into like, it was like an event, so there were a bunch of civilians around, and they were there to kill like the leader of some faction. And the ranger cast Spike Growth. Anyways, something that was AoE that caught a bunch of civilians in it. And the DM had the civilians continue to try to run through it, and therefore died because civilians have like no hit points. And so the party was mad at the ranger for casting the AoE spell, and the ranger was mad at the DM for letting the civilians die. And the DM was like, is this my fault? Did I make the wrong call? Not a single person thought they made the wrong call. Don't cast AoE. I know this isn't PvP, but don't cast AoE if you know it's going to hit people that you don't want to hit. Just don't do it. And so sometimes it's important. Shit. I lost my sentence halfway through. Oh, so sometimes it's like necessary to hit the other players, but that's something that you have to talk about beforehand. Sounds like session 0 didn't happen at the table. Yeah, that seems to be a huge issue, and there are still people out there who are like against this session 0 thing. They're like, oh, like we don't set boundaries, we just know our friends, and it's like, well, how well do you actually know your friends? Because how many times are people just not comfortable being like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable? Really fucking often. Did they realize that you can't kill my character if I'm not playing anymore? I'm taking her with me. Yeah, right? That's actually a really good point. If somebody leaves the table, I think their character just poof. They just don't exist anymore. We've shifted timelines and they never existed. That memory you have, it's false. Sunk cost fallacy. Thank you. Haven't had coffee yet this morning. That's fine. I mean, you guys watch me type all the time. I can't type. Spike growth. Yeah, spike growth. Spike growth will kill a crowd. I'm glad I got that right eventually, kind of. But yeah, that I mean, it wasn't the same thing, but the idea that like you need to know the consequences of your actions. And I mean, that would be like a really weird thing to me to put into a D&D game, but you could turn off PvP in your game like you can in a video or in some video games, where somehow just, magic and like your party can't be hurt, but of course that has to be agreed to by the whole group. Now, I don't like it personally, but if somebody wanted to like take PvP out of the game by like you actually cannot hurt other players even if you use an AoE spell, I guess go for it. But also I think there's a feat for that or something like that. I don't know. Or no, there's a thing that's part of Warlock? I'm not sure. Maybe a GM warning, if you do this, this will happen. Yeah. So I don't agree or disagree with that, because I think it is important that people like think the things through, but at some point you have to think your own actions through too. But I'm also like the person who like, if they cast the thing and they haven't like counted or whatever, and like they realize that it's hitting somebody and they're like, never mind, I wouldn't do that. That's okay to me. I've had my teammates hit me upon requests as a verb. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. But yeah, again, that just like comes back to the like making sure you're like communicating things. I know sorcerers, thank you, of meta magic. That's definitely the one that I'm looking for. See, not encyclopedic knowledge. It's not all in here. I look a lot of stuff up, and I will probably always look a lot of stuff up. I just knew that Red had mentioned it at some point. I honestly couldn't remember, like, I don't even know what he is. He's not a sorcerer, though, is he? Maybe he looked at being a sorcerer? Because he's a Wizlock, I'm pretty sure. I think. Oh god, I don't even know. I don't tell them what might happen, but I give them a chance to back out before committing if it has potentially disastrous— Yeah, that's what I do too, yeah. However, this was a tip in the Reddit thread where everybody was still like victim blaming the DM, the new DM with a bunch of new players. They were like, oh, well, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done this. And it's like, okay, those are great tips for the next time, but they've never DM'd before. They don't know these things. But one of the tips was like with new players is it is good to like lay out the consequences of things happening, but I think that becomes like less fun when people are already aware of consequences of things. So like the example like for specifically that story was there was a well that they were meant to climb down, and they were meant to use ropes, but of course you can just jump down, you can try to climb down the side of it, or you can use a rope and the DC is different, or there lacks a DC if you decide to just jump down the well. And the tip was, like you have to tell new players that if they jump down the well, this is how much damage they're gonna take, and then you get to like make them make the decision still. But a veteran player knows how much, at least to a degree, damage they're going to take from jumping down a well. Especially if you've told them how deep the well is, or you can't see the bottom of the well, or whatever it happens to be. And so I think the like giving the consequences kind of changes over time, like how experienced your players are, because I think when it's a new player, you say you take such and such d6 damage because you're jumping down this many feet, so that they kind of start to internalize that rule. Whereas a more veteran player, they might say like, hey, I'm going to jump down this hole, and you say, you can't see the bottom of this hole, would you still like to jump down it? Because it gives like a more like narrative thing for them to make a decision instead of a mechanical thing. Because I like to try to keep like the mechanics talk, not none, because that's impossible, but like to a minimum. Careful spell or the evocation abilities, you can make your allies succeed the save. Oh, maybe it was evocation. That might be why he can do it. I think it's careful spell. Oh yeah, careful spell, yeah. Until level 4, you are playing with a safety net, but after that, you're expected to live with consequences. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty fair. 'Cause, like, assuming that you're talking, like, the first time you play kind of thing. I climb down using my loot, my loot for safety. I'll play my lute a jaunty sound, and the sound waves will carry me down, carefully and safely. That'd be pretty funny to just like watch like music notes like around it while you're doing like Featherfall or something. I love that. I love that image. I'm glad that I have that now. Thank you, James, and welcome in. Hi, how are you? A new definition of the name Wellerman. Yeah. James, have you played D&D before? If you have, how was your first experience? Was it good? Was it bad? And why? Oops. That reminds you, one time, one of your players, flavorized Featherfall, was that they used their umbrella like Mary Poppins. I love that. I love when people decide to, like, flavor their spells to, like, fit them a little bit, especially stuff that, like, doesn't change mechanics at all. It's, like, just for flavor. I love that. That's how you play in general. Like, I'm not gonna kill your characters in tutorial mode, but death after that is on you. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a super fair way to do it. It's been a while, but it was a good time. You had really, really good DM your first few times into the game, so it made it much more enjoyable. Yeah, I think it's very possible for a DM to make or break a game. But also, I mean, and the reason that I say the DM is because, like, whether or not they want to believe it, like, DMs do have, like, a little bit extra power in the game, and, like, this is, like, in-game and out-of-game, and this is something that I don't know that we've really touched on yet, but, the DM, as well as the other players, this is on the other players too, but people expect it of the DM, is that they need to be aware of, like, they need to try their best to be aware of the, like, feelings of everybody at the table. And so it's a lot easier if you're a DM who, like, picks up on, like, social cues and stuff. I know not everybody's good at that, and that's, like, I'm not saying you can't be a good DM if you're not good at that, but, you just have to use your skills a little bit differently in that case. You have to be, like, more communicative about whether or not everybody's having fun. But, like, realizing that somebody hasn't talked in a little while, realizing that somebody is, like, on their phone a lot, especially if they're not usually on their phone a lot, there's probably a reason. And maybe it's just they're having an off day, but maybe something happened in game that made them, like, not really want to play, not want to engage anymore. And like I said, other players can call attention to this too, but it is kind of expected of the DM, because they're, like, running the game. But I'm glad your first time was enjoyable. Your first experience was kind of weird cringe. Ooh. Joined a group of young teens, and you're in your mid-20s at this point, for Adventurers League a few times before quickly realizing you'd rather DM than PC. That's so interesting. I think it's really cool that that's, like, the second person, I think, to say that they tried being a player, and they're like, I feel like I would have more fun as a DM. And that's really cool, because I think we see this, like, trope of, like, the forever DM a lot. And I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of people who are forever DMs enjoy being forever DMs. And maybe, like, every once in a while they want to be a player in, like, a one-shot just to, like, remember what it's like. But I think a lot of people just enjoy being a DM too. And so I don't think that the, like, forever DM thing is necessarily a bad thing for a lot of people. But yeah, so it's interesting the, like, age difference there too. Because a lot of people wouldn't think that that's, I mean, I guess young teens to mid-20s, like, that's, like, we'll say, like, 10 years difference, 8-10 years difference. That's, like, a pretty big difference. And I'm not saying that you can't do it. And then also the fact that it's Adventurers League. I've never played in Adventurers League, but usually I see the tip of go play some Adventurers League to meet new people to start a campaign so you don't have to play Adventurers League. I'm sure there are lots of people out there who enjoy Adventurers League, but I feel like it's a very stiff game. At least from what I've heard. Like I said, I've never played in an Adventurers League at all, or with, like, Adventurers League, like, guidelines or anything, so I don't really know, but that's kind of just what I've heard, is that it's, like, a little bit more stiff, and you're not always playing with the same people, and, like, stuff like that. She was a weather wizard, so she always had a cute parasol type umbrella with her. I love it. I really do. You certainly enjoy DMing far more than playing. Yeah, I really like both, and also I'm really happy that I have had the opportunity to kind of go back and forth. Like, I'm always ready to do either. And I haven't been stuck in either position because I do honestly really love both. But also, like, I wouldn't be mad if I became a forever DM because it's not like I never get to, like, play the game again. Like, I still get to play the game as an NPC. I still get to roll dice as an NPC and stuff like that. And if I really, really needed to be a player, I think I could be one of those people who could play a DMPC without, like, really fucking it up. I know not everybody likes DMPCs, but, like, if I, like, really needed to scratch that itch of, like, playing a druid or something, like, I could do that. You want a shirt that says Forever DM, but inside a heart? I can make that happen. I can make merch. Well, most fun classes are in Xanathar's. That's fair. I honestly don't know a lot of, like, the other books. I've looked in Xanathar's a little bit. I think I've probably looked in all of them a little bit. But I only have a player's handbook and a monster manual somewhere. I still haven't found my monster manual, which is driving me nuts. I haven't looked very hard for it since the first time I looked for it, but we moved and I don't know where it is now. It's not RP heavy, very combat tactical, at least from your experience. What is? I'm confused. Oh, Adventurers League. Yeah. I think, to me, like, the RP is, like, the fun part. So, like, if you like the combat tactical part, then, like, Adventurers League is probably for you. It's just not for me. And that like, it's important to know what you like in a game so that you can find a table that works for you. DMing and playing in 2 long-running campaigns currently. That's pretty awesome. Many bad rolls speaks to you. Your dice did not like you at all. Yeah, so these were, like, all things that like could add to having a negative experience kind of thing. And, like, the in-game issues, to me, these are only things that could be the straw on the camel's back. Like, if none of these other things happened, many bad rolls isn't actually going to, like, ruin your time playing, right? Like, it's kind of just something to laugh at. It might be a little frustrating that your character never actually gets to do anything, but in my opinion, many bad rolls is usually only extremely bad if they're all combat rolls. If you have, like, really bad rolls during, like, a social interaction, sometimes that's still a lot of fun. I think the thing people forget about D&D is that it's a cooperative asymmetric game. It's just that it's played differently depending on what side of the screen you're on. Absolutely. And also, I think even people who do get that, I think it's wrong to think of it as, like, DM against the players. Depending on the DM, some DMs are definitely against their players. But it's almost like the DM is, like, a neutral point. Now, obviously they do play, like, the enemies, which I guess is, like, being against, but they're not necessarily, like, rooting for the enemies to always win, if that makes sense. Welcome in, the hero dragon, how are you? Many bad rolls, my dice are far against my players. Oh my god, I was rolling so bad the last session that I just, like, changed my dice out, and it was literally just that die did not want to roll well for me that day. It was rolling, like, 2, 3, 6... I think 6 was, like, the highest it got, and I was like, fuck this, I need new dice. Which is why I have so many dice, because sometimes you gotta put your dice in the dice jail. I do have to bounce, but it was awesome meeting you. I will see you around. I hope to see you back, too. Enjoy the rest of your day, or you're sleeping, or something. I don't know what time zone you're in. Happy time zones! Also, if you have a good DM, they can still make a bad roll a good roll, so that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so to speak. Yeah. I'm on my player's side, yeah. Don't get you started on DM versus PC mentality. Yeah, I hate that. DMs aren't the bad guys, they just facilitate them. Yes, that's a great way to say it. I love that. Because honestly, like, I don't want my PCs to die. I want them to live. I want them to work their way all through my story, you know? D20 fans? Like Dimension 20? Because I've never actually... I've heard of it. if that's what you're asking. Am I a fan of actual D20s? Depends how they're rolling. D20 dice? I don't know what D20 dice is. Or do you mean the die? I'm so confused. Question of the day answer. Oh, question of the day went off. I don't do Starbucks, but I do enjoy a good mocha made with dark roast coffee. Nice. The reason I asked this is because I decided to try something weird at Starbucks, and it was delicious, and I want everybody else to try it. Actual dice. Yeah, so I'm a fan of dice if they roll well. Or if they're very pretty, or they have something cute in them. I saw these dice ones that have little duckies in them. They're very cute. You have a friend who does not play D20 and you don't understand why? Weird. So my weird Starbucks thing, though, that, like, it's not going to be a regular thing, because it's definitely not, like, an everyday, or, I mean, I don't get Starbucks every day either, but you know what I mean? It's not, like, an every visit thing, but it was a white chocolate mocha, with, one less pump of white mocha or whatever, and, one pump of raspberry. I knew it would be, like, okay at the very least. Like, I knew it wasn't going to be a garbage drink, but it was so good that, like, I took my sip and I did a happy dance. It was so good. For anybody who had, Tim Hortons hot smoothies back when they had those, it was kind of like one of those. A little string and voice are pulling you toward, give them a drink and let them TPK. I mean, there's always that, like, I want to give them, like a deadly encounter and see what happens, because I think it's also really cool to see if they can, like, make their way through it in, like, some, like, creative way. But I've never TPK'd. Have I even killed a player? I think I've killed a player. I'm not, or, like, not a player, killed a PC. But I'm not actually sure. Click clack math rocks. Click clack math rocks. Saw that in Discord. Was it good? It was so good. It was like those I don't know if you had one, James, but, like, I think over a decade ago, because I'm pretty sure I was in elementary school when they came out, those hot smoothies from Tim Hortons, which it was basically, because I ended up working at Tim Hortons later, even though they had, like, kind of gotten rid of the hot smoothies at that point, they still had the base for them, so it was basically just a vanilla base. And then I think there were 4 kinds you could have. So you could have just a vanilla one, which I guess was just the base. And then they had, like, a raspberry flavor shot, an orange flavor shot, which tastes like a fucking orange creamsicle, with, like, a hot orange creamsicle, but delicious. And then, I think hazelnut. Maybe they had mint. But you know how they have those flavor shots now? It was basically like any of those flavor shots you could put into, like, this vanilla base. It was delicious. You don't think you had them out there, but it sounds delicious. Maybe this might be what happened, is they, you know how they usually roll out to, like, just a couple of stores before they do it? I know that they did this with the frozen lemonade back then, back when they first came out with frozen lemonade, because we had people come into our store, ask for frozen lemonade all the time. We're like, we don't have frozen lemonade. We've never had frozen lemonade. What the heck are you talking about? So yeah, so, like, maybe you just, maybe they were a failed thing. I thought they were delicious. I got one, like, most mornings, because, one of my friend's moms, even though we could easily walk to school, would pick us all up and we'd go to Tim Hortons and then she'd drive us to school. They were delicious and they shouldn't have gotten rid of them. You've never killed a character? I think I've killed one. I'm pretty sure I killed my sister's character, but I'm not positive. Otherwise, I can't think of a time. So, like, maybe I just never did. TPK'd a group of youngins. They wanted to fight the dragon head on. All of them got the first hits in, lined it up in a nice cone and line. Oh no! They had no idea what they were doing. You've TPK'd, not my fault. Yeah, it's often not your fault. Usually something bad happens, whether it's like they have a lot of bad rolls and you have a lot of good rolls, or like something tactical bad happens. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. They didn't slow down and see the signs of spiders before entering a large chamber underneath a ruined city. Oh no. Don't think you had them, but sounds delicious. Test markets, totally, yeah. Sorry, sis. It was her birthday yesterday. She's 19 now. Makes me feel old. And I it's because there's like a huge age difference between us that makes me feel old. There's like 10 years difference. It's like a little less than 10 years. because she was born at the beginning of the year and I was born at the end of the year. But yeah, there's like 10 years difference between us. So like her turning 19, just like, shit, that's too old. It's too old. I've definitely never TPK'd a group as a DM, but I've been TPK'd. And how many player deaths have I had? I think I've had 3. My first character died in our second session, which means I didn't really get to play them, which is like kind of sad because like that was probably the character that I wrote up the not the most backstory, but my next character I did not flesh out at all because I just assumed that I was going to die. And then she lived for a really long time. That was Helga. So the first one was Velvet, which if you've read The Belgariad or The Malorian by David Eddings, it would be weird if you'd read The Malorian, not The Belgariad, but anyways, extremely loosely based off the Silk character, and also obviously was female and not a dude like Silk. But she was like a rogue. And then the next one was Helga, who lasted for way too long, considering I didn't flesh her out. And it's not that I wasn't having fun playing with her, but I didn't really know who she was. So it was hard to like make decisions and stuff. There were only 2 things, and they both came from like in campaign. So, basically what we did is like a couple people had died, and then our DM couldn't DM the next session, so Red actually DM'd a one-shot, so the people who had died just like made characters, and those characters were gonna move on into the new campaign. And so during that one-shot, she like kind of like gained the ideal of like always helping children, kind of like maternal instinct type thing. And then the next thing was her big beautiful beard got burnt off a couple of times, and she also like died to fire, but it wasn't really death. It was like we would die and we'd like show up in these pods because of the way that the like because it was like a planner portal dungeon thing. So I died to fire a couple of times, and so I let her, like, she died to fire a couple of times and like was fearful of fire. So like those were like the 2 things I knew about her, but I didn't flesh out her backstory at all, so I didn't really know anything about her. But she lasted for way too long. And then the other one, was there another one? Oh, the other one was a TPK, and I don't even remember what character that was. Now for character deaths, I've killed a bunch of PCs. Not your fault, they do stupid games and win stupid prizes. That sounds like, I don't know why, but like I definitely like picked some like cursed carnival and them getting a deck of many things. I know that's not what you meant, you just meant consequences to the dumb shit they do, but that's what came to my mind. Have you experienced a player that actually doesn't like D&D, but gets dragged along by a friend? You've seen that a lot lately. I haven't witnessed it personally, for sure. Though I do think that the story that we talked about on Monday from RD&D, I think that was like a huge part of it. I think the group was like, yeah, let's play D&D, but nobody was really in it to play D&D. And so that was like a huge part of them like not being engaged with the game. Now, I think sometimes it's okay to drag your friend along, even if they don't really want to play right away. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Flock of Misfits. What kind of bird are you? But I think after the first session, if they didn't dig it, then like they shouldn't come back again, because that's not fun for them or for anybody else at the table. Carnival Games, you've done that. Sure, try to steal from the knife thrower and the guy who crushed rocks with his hand. Why are you trying to steal from them? That seems dumb. You had a character come close to dying in a Star Wars RP you were playing once. That was quite the adventure. See, I've never played anything else. Not a single other thing, and I would love to. I've been invited to jump into a Pathfinder game at some point if I want, but I haven't taken them up on that offer yet. Mostly because I just don't have time for things, and but I do think that eventually, I think part is like content too. to try out other TTRPGs would be fun. And like it would be extra fun, I think, if I could like find people to like teach me on stream. That would be fucking cool. That might be a good idea. Pathfinder is D&D plus more math. See, that's what I heard recently, and that kind of turned me off of it. So I'm not really sure I want to try Pathfinder, but at the same time, like, I still think it would be good to try it out. And, like, maybe take some inspiration from, like, the mechanics that are different in Pathfinder. But also, I'd like to try some, like, smaller ones where it's, like, you can, like, it's, like, meant to be a one-shot kind of thing. I think something like that would be fun to, like, test out and, like, so that it's not as much of a time commitment. It's much more mechanics, but it's a lot more math involved. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm not bad at math, but I get stressed when I have to do math in front of people. I don't know why. It's just like performance anxiety, I guess, but obviously I don't have performance anxiety about everything. Because I do this and I like doing this, and this doesn't cause me performance anxiety at all, so I don't know why math does. Kids on Bikes is decent. What's that? Tell me about it. I'm gonna write it down. This is my first note of the stream. I've been writing as many notes. Is it because I haven't been remembering to write notes, or what was it? Kids on Bikes. This pen doesn't work. I think Iggy stole my pen that works. He knocked it down yesterday. I never picked it back up. Paintbrush, that won't work. I don't have any paint. Oh god. Why don't I have a pen? Ignatius, what did you do? I hope I didn't just summon him. Oh, I can use this random marker, maybe. Smaller RPG game, simple and easy. What's its like? I don't know what word I want to use there. Like, what's the theme of it, I guess? This is gonna, like, go through the page, I think. It won't, because it barely works. Good. Kids on Bikes. So I'll definitely look into that. There's... I don't know if it's a smaller one, but there's one that's like been on Kickstarter for a little bit now that I'm kind of interested in, mostly because it's like a horror-based one, and I don't think horror lends itself like particularly well in D&D. And a lot of people have said that. And now, I mean, that might just be like my I woke you up. I said your name and I woke you up. Come here, buddy. You can come. You want me to move this, or are you gonna jump into it? What are you doing? You can come over. This isn't to stop you. There. Want to come over? No. Okay. Don't jump in that box. You'll probably fall. So the horror thing, like, not lending itself well in D&D, like, might be, like, the writer and not the... Hey! How dare you? And not, like, the actual, like, thing. Maybe I just don't know how to write horror. I don't know. But there's one that's coming out, I think it's called Shiver? I can't actually remember, I'm the worst. But I think I'd like to check that one out when it comes out. Oh, he did it, he jumped into the box. I thought I was gonna slide right off the couch. I definitely thought that's what was gonna happen. Really enjoy the Malifaux system setting. When you ran some Halloween one-shots with it. Ooh, does that mean that it's a horror one? Should I look into that? Where did I put my... Oh. Why did I put it all the way over there? Is it because the cat came? Probably. I should find myself a better pen than this one. And I probably shouldn't put the pen away. Also, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Flock of Misses. What kind of bird are you? I almost didn't say it. What's wrong with me? Malifaux. Also, is that actually how you say it, or am I Frenching it up? Because gothic steampunk horror. Ooh. Ooh, I'm definitely gonna check into that, too. I have a couple written down, I think. There was another one. I have a game, like a video game, that I have to check out as well. The cat is destroying things back there. World of Darkness is a horror system. Ooh, okay, you guys rock. World of Darkness. I love when I say this and then people just start like listing off things for me to check out. Makes me very happy. You can come. He will not make up his mind. Vampire is good. You still have your player handbook for that one. It's just called Vampire. World of Darkness is a horror system more based on RP and interaction, which obviously I like. A good one is Vampire the Masquerade. Okay. Somebody mentioned that before. Was it you that mentioned that before? I meant to ask about it and then I got distracted because that's what I do. Vampire Masquerade. Or Vampire the Masquerade. And James, you've played that one before too? That was pretty cool. Call of Cthulhu I've definitely heard of before. There's always Call of Cthulhu. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, there's too many things! Call of Cthulhu. I think I just spelled Cthulhu wrong, but I'll figure it out. Cult Divinity Lost. Hi, buddy! What's up, sir? Oh, you're such a good boy just sitting down. That's not like you. Nobody can see you when you sit down, though. I'll pet you in a second, okay? I have to write down all these things. You guys are going too fast. I'll have to scroll up. Vase in the Nordic horror? That sounds good. Okay, I didn't write down, they came from beneath the sea sounds, ominous, and I like it. Ominous and creepy as heck. They came from beneath the sea. I'm gonna need to switch over my page. Vase in the Nordic horror. I don't know if that's how you say that. Am I saying that right? VTM for short. And then there's werewolf and mage. Oh. Oh no. I've done a bit of a dumb here. That's okay, we'll write it at the bottom of this page too. I filled up the bottom of a page thinking that the next page was empty, but it also had notes on it. Whoops. Werewolf. Mage. Jeez. Which haven't been updated, either of them? Oh, okay. Might have been you a long time ago. Unless it- oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's been mentioned before. I'm pretty sure I've heard of it, and I'm pretty sure it was on stream. I'm not positive, though. It was a lot of fun. Okay. I'll check that one out, too. First time here. Afraid so. Must have been- maybe. I don't know. Unless timey-wimey things have happened again. I mean, you never know, right? You googled it, so spelled it correctly. Fair. 10 Candles is a good one. That sounds, it feels like the name tells something about the mechanics. I could be wrong. But when I hear 10 Candles, it makes me think that, like, over time the candles go out. And if it's not the case, I need to make my own thing that's called, like, I don't know, something else that you can put out, like 15 torches or something. Surprise cat attack. He's being so good. Don't rest your head. All flesh must be eaten. Dread. I feel like I've heard of Dread. 10 Candles and Dread don't use dice, but they're still RPGs. Okay. Iggy. I lost the lid because of you. Where is- that's okay, it's almost dead anyways. Okay, I gotta write those down quick. Don't rest your- that also just sounds like super ominous. I like it. Don't rest. I think I'm using the last of the ink in this. Don't rest your head. All flesh must be eaten. Is that zombie based? Because I love me some zombie stuff. Dread. Are you looking at yourself again, sir? He's so cute. You like that the acronym for Call of Cthulhu is COCK? Yeah, that's fantastic. Look at those cute kitty- oh, big yawn. Unknown Armies is pretty weird and you love it. I like weird stuff. Unknown Armies. Okay, well, I guess this pen just is never gonna get used again, so let's get its use out. He totally is, it's so cute. You're so cute. Yeah, you're so cute, sir. I know, I said I'd pet you, so here are your pets. If I like zombies, outbreak, undead. Yeah, my favorite game of all time is 7 Days to Die. And this is like high praise because I have a really hard time picking a favorite anything. So I have a favorite game, which is like to me that I can pick one, and a favorite lettuce. Outbreak, undead. But there's actually going to be a 7 Days to Die integration. I almost said episode. Stream coming up soon because I owe everybody Jen the Trader cosplay from that. From like January when I did that charity event. But I haven't bought all the stuff for it yet, so I'm gonna click send on the stuff that I have in the Amazon list for that, and that's gonna come up soon. I haven't heard that one in a while. I like it. Alright, sir. Here. Cat Cam! There he is. He's so cute. He's being a good boy, too. Sometimes he's a menace when he comes up on the table. The desk. Whatever. But thank you for all of those games, guys. I'm definitely gonna take a peek at them. And I don't know, eventually I'll play some, I hope. I do have access to a lot of people, and I think it'd be fun to like do some like checking out new RPGs, TTRPGs and stuff on stream. I think that would be fun. I think that's probably some good content and whatnot. Stream elements, calm down. But yeah, we do have a Discord, and I do have a YouTube. The YouTube right now is pardonnez-moi, is all campaign stuff for the campaign that we're running on stream, but I am planning on putting up edited versions of these D&D chats, as well as some like YouTube exclusive content. We're gonna do like some educational stuff. I don't know what other stuff we're gonna do, but that's like the plan right now. There will be a new D&D question of the week up at some point soon, hopefully when I think of one. You're ridiculous. Hey, thanks for checking out Chicka D&D. If you liked what you saw, click all the buttons down below. Subscribe, like, comment, you know the drill. Also, it'd be really cool if you came and checked us out live at Chickadee93 on Twitch, where you get to participate in the conversation or watch us play D&D on campaign days. Thank you again so much. See you next time. Bye.